So it's going to be slightly different from the normal sort of school in class in person sort of idea. Okay, so hopefully all the technology will all work. Hopefully you'll all be able to join, but there are going to be issues. I understand that. If there are technological things that happen and this all crashes or whatever, please don't panic. All right, we will sort it all out. Okay. If there are things that I'm asking you to do that are problematic because of technology or other things, that's absolutely fine. Just make sure you let us know. Okay. It's all a bit different because we're all at home as opposed to in the classroom. So wearing my name tag, so you in case you've forgotten who I am, just say. All right, now. Good to see you, as said. Now I'm going to push this little button, which should show me everybody, and then I'm going to push this button, which should give me a breakdown of you all attending, which should be fantastic. Now I've posted to Classroom. You will see they'll either arrive now or they're going to arrive. I've posted to Classroom a little survey thing, which you're going to use. You're going to use that as a reflection tool. Okay, but that will come a bit later. So you'll be answering that later. All right. Today, I've also posted into the Classroom some other things for you to do. And one of the major things that we're going to work on is, hello, Darwish, we're going to look at, again, the market model. So we need to jump into the sharing of the screen, which will happen like that. There it is. And we're going to jump to nearpod.com. Now, I've posted the link to this into the Classroom as well, but it is RTF. QN is the code, so at nearpod.com. So if you jump into that, and then we'll be able to play along. Remember, the trick was to have multiple windows open. So you'd have the Nearpod window open, you'd have your notes open, so you're able to make your notes. Maybe have, let's say, the Google open, so you're able to find answers to questions, etc., if need be, or translations or those sorts of things. Okay. Now, today, you've seen in the breakdown what it is I'm wanting to do today, and we'll see how far we get. So, how many of you are there? Let's see, all 8 joining. All right, so that should be all okay. You're all here. All right, good. Okay. All right, so if we move on, again, the codes are going to be up there in the left-hand corner of the screen, so it should stay up there. All right, so moving on, we've done those. Now, let's go back one. What I'm wanting to ask you is about this. This is the equilibrium. All right, this is where we saw we had a supply curve, we had a demand curve, and they met. All right, they shook hands at the center. Okay. All right, and that's going to create our entire market of consumers and our market of producers, all coming together to create an equilibrium price and an equilibrium quantity set by the market. Now, the idea of equilibrium is a relatively fancy concept. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing now. Okay. And come back to here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my mic off, and I'm going to give you about 30-odd seconds to discuss with each other. You can do it through chat if you wish, what an equilibrium is. Ready, set, go.
Hey guys, talk. Can we talk instead of like?
Yeah, sure. It's easier. Yeah.
Yeah, Darwish.
No, I think.
Angie, turn on your mic. Turn on your mic.
All right, guys, what do you think equilibrium is?
Equilibrium is what, as we've already seen, when the demand curve meets the supply curve. So when the economy is capable of stabilizing itself at a certain level.
Yes, very nice.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what we thought as well.
Yeah,
Definitely.
So, yes, me too. I thought of the same thing as him, you know.
But yeah, no. Like it's like that word stable. Yeah, that's like because the economy, like when the market, sorry, like when the suppliers and the
Demand is equal.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Very nice.
Because of how an economy works, if the equilibrium will be shifted to left or right, because of the demand or supplies changing, it will actually shift back towards where it's supposed to be, because it just counters. I don't know how to
Yes,
explain
that's what I thought.
this.
Yeah, see here.
Yeah. That's what I was about to say, you know? You stole my idea.
Hi.
Cap. That's cap.
How can I steal your idea if I can't even see your face?
Nice one.
All right.
Well done. Some good thinking there. I'm impressed.
Thank you.
No, you did well. You did very well. Okay. All right. So let's have a look back to our equilibrium. So how are we going to do that? I'm going to do the whole sharing screen thing again. Let's try that. Do the window. And then up it goes. Should be sharing now. You seeing it now?
Yeah.
Yes. Good.
We see it.
Good, fantastic. So an equilibrium. Now all of you were discussing it, and that was good. And you were talking about supply equaling demand and all of those sorts of ideas. That's fantastic. Right? Our little person here talks about things being in balance. So that's that idea of there being a supply side and a demand side. So forces about supply and forces about demand pushing, all right? But then they reach an equilibrium. So that's when the forces are balanced. So when you're saying demand equals supply, you're saying all of the pressure that comes from the consumers and all of the pressure or force that comes from the producers, they're actually equal. The market forces are equal at that point, right? So if it's sitting there, if you're at an equilibrium, the idea is that there is no tendency for it to change. So the market doesn't want to change, okay? So,
Mr. David,
yeah,
what's tendency, like as in economic phrase?
the tendency one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What does it mean?
sorry. The market in and of itself, it's kind of, we are kind of turning it to like a person in a way. We're kind of making it like a real life person. Okay, so when you are sitting there at the end of the day, you've done all of your work and you're sitting there, a nice cool drink in your hand, the TV is on, you're relaxing, you don't particularly want to do anything. You just want to sit there and chill. Yeah?
Right.
So there is no tendency for you, there's no encouragement or incentive for you to move. You're just sitting there. Yeah? So that's what we say with the market, is that unless something intervenes in a market, so if we go back a bit, so unless something causes the market to change, it will always sit there. Okay? If something comes along and causes the supply to change, then the equilibrium will change. If something comes along and causes demand to change, again, the equilibrium will change. But if that doesn't happen, the market's going to sit exactly where it wants to be, right? Because it's tired and it needs a break.
All right. Thank you.
All right. So that's what an equilibrium is. We can move past all of those. All right, we can move past all of those. Now, what am I showing here? What's happening here? What do we think?
The forces aren't balanced. So like supply and demand isn't balanced.
That's right. So if you've got a price of P2, this one here, that price is lower than the equilibrium price. See, there's the equilibrium. There's the equilibrium price. P2 is lower than that. So that's going to send signals into the market. Right? With a low price, we're going to expect potentially there to be an excess of demand. More people are going to demand this particular product than they're able to supply it. So that's going to start pushing the price up because there's a shortage of this particular product. So like at an auction, where they're holding up the one product and going, hey, who wants it, who wants it, who wants it, who wants it? And everybody starts saying, I want it for $10. No, I'm prepared to pay $20. I'm prepared to pay $30, and so on, until eventually they're going to reach this price here. All right, suppliers will see the increase that they need to produce in order to get this higher price. So they're going to increase their quantities supplied. But as they do, the price starts going up. And as the price starts going up, the quantity demanded starts to decrease. So you end up back at the equilibrium. So it's that analogy about turning on the taps and the water automatically goes to the equilibrium. If we aren't interfering in the marketplace, it's going to go to an equilibrium. But we don't necessarily always agree that we like this particular price, but that doesn't matter because that's what the market says. So that's where it is. That's called a disequilibrium, right? Where the market is not at an equilibrium. It's called a disequilibrium. So if, however, the price is the other way and the price is set too high, so there's the equilibrium price. There's the price being set too high. All right. And what's happening here is that people are saying, I don't want that. So they're decreasing their quantities that they are demanding. As they do that, producers are going to have too many, an excess of supply, right, of their products sitting around. Nobody's buying them. So they're going to decrease the quantities that they supply, because there's too many of them. They're just sitting around in the warehouse. You know the word inventory? Has anybody heard the word inventory?
Anyone who's ever played a video game knows what the word inventory means.
Good. Fantastic. So in this particular context, you're seeing what's called inventories build up. All right? So there's an excess of supply, which means that there's a lot of stock that's not being sold. So they've got it sitting in the warehouse. All right? And they're desperately hoping to sell it, but the only way they're going to be able to potentially is to decrease the price. So they're going to decrease the quantities that they're producing because they don't need as many. They're going to decrease the price, and as they decrease the price, consumers all of a sudden start saying, well, it's cheaper, so I might like to afford a few. So they start buying greater quantities here, and you end up, again, back at the equilibrium. So whatever happens in a marketplace, if we're not if we're not interfering in a market, then it is going to return to its equilibrium. All right, in this case, P1, Q3. All right, so that is kind of like this. It's a magical idea. This is what Adam Smith came up with all the way back in 1776. Right? He wrote about these markets. They're controlled as if by an invisible hand. They just do the things that they do without anybody telling them. Nobody is telling it to do this. It just does. All right? So that's about an equilibrium. So in your notes, you're going to need to explain how an economy moves from a state of disequilibrium, so this one here, for example, to a state of equilibrium. So in this case, you're talking about there being a disequilibrium, inventories building up, the price decreasing, and you ending up back at an equilibrium. All right, for the other one, this one, here you're talking about a shortage being created. So the consumers are actually going to bid up the price, and as they bid up the price, there's an increase in quantity supplied, and you end up again back at the equilibrium. All right? You need to be able to explain the process, the movement from a disequilibrium to an equilibrium. And that's skill number one. All right, that's an application skill. You've taken your law of demand, your law of supply. You're using them to figure out where a market equilibrium is and then how it actually gets there. The next skill on the application side is what happens if demand increases. So that demand curve, which is downward sloping, when that shifts to the right, then it's about what happens to the rest of the market. So when we say the rest of the market, we're talking about if demand was to increase, so moving to the right, what happens to the equilibrium price and what happens to the equilibrium quantity if that occurs. Okay. So if we think about that, all right, what do you think would happen? So here is your chance to have a go at drawing and I know the technology, etc., may not work for everybody, but we'll have a go at drawing what a market, any market you like, demand curve increases, and what happens. There you go. I'll turn. Yeah, there you go. Have a go. All right. And well. All right, so remember the demand curve. Yeah, so we need a supply curve in there for our market. That's it, good. Now you also need to illustrate what's going to happen to the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity. So work out where the equilibrium price was, where the equilibrium quantity was, and then illustrate what has happened to it, where the new equilibrium price might be and the new equilibrium quantity might be. Yeah, that's good work, Connor. All right, so then on the price axis, working out where the price is, and on the quantity axis, working out where the quantity is. Evelyn, this is looking really good. Lynn, yeah, we need to see a supply curve, perhaps. You've shown PPC curves there. You need same here. So we need supply curves. Good. This is good, Darwish. Right. We'll work a bit more on some of the. It's obviously not easy because you're doing it in the computer, but when you do it on your paper, you're going to be able to show these. The market and the actual effects a lot easier if it's on your paper and with your pen. That's looking very good, Andy. Well done. Yeah. Again, you want to highlight what has happened to the price and what has happened to the quantity. Yeah, so you should have a supply curve in here to show that it's an equilibrium. This is looking good, everyone. Well done. Yeah, listen, good. I like the use of color as well. Useful. Good, still waiting, a couple. Good work, Charles. Excuse me. Have a frog in the throat. All right, some good work going on. Very good, Yasin. Very good, Charles. Well done. All right. Okay.
Mr. David,
Yeah.
I'm a bit confused, like when to draw a curved line or a straight line.
Yeah, at this stage, all you need to worry about is straight lines. Okay.
Oh, all right. Okay, got it.
Yeah, they're easier to draw as a straight line. Yes, mathematically and realistically, your demand and supply curve are going to be curved, but for the sake of what you're doing at the moment, you only need to worry about them being straight lines. In fact, for pretty much all of your IGCSE, almost all of it, you're going to deal with just straight line curves. There will be a couple when we can discuss what happens if they are curved, but otherwise they're going to be straight lines. It makes it much easier to do an analysis on, yeah, some of the future analysis that we're going to use is going to require them to be straight lines.
Okay, thank you.
Not sure if you're needing a bit more time. Still got a couple that are in progress. It isn't easy using the computer to do the drawings, I understand that. But the idea is what I'm wanting you to be able to do so that in your notes, you're going to be able to do this. And drawing it freehand is a very useful skill, because in the exam, yeah, you'll need to do it. Also, it's a very useful way for you to illustrate the concepts that you're going to cover. So if there is an exam question that asks you what would happen in the market for hats if demand increases, then you're able to do a quick sketch, all right, and do an explanation as to what's going to happen. Okay? That way you are covering not only the application, the model, you've got the skill of the explanation that comes after that, and that can be worked out to about maybe 6, sometimes up to 8 marks, particularly if there's further analysis that could come into it. Okay. I don't want to wait too much longer, but I still have a couple who are in progress. As a general rule, if you look at the diagram you have created, so Anyi, if you look at yours, I think yours is probably the clearest that I can see. So if I bring yours up and then share yours with everybody, ta-da! All right. So this is what Anyi has done. This is really good, Anyi. What's happened to the price as a result of the increase in demand? What do you see?
It goes up.
Yeah, it's increased. So when there's an increase in demand in a market, we see an increase in the price. We're also seeing an increase in the quantity, okay, as well. Isaac is not able, his Google Meet isn't working. Okay, all right, it's no problem. Don't panic, Isaac, don't panic. All right, we will get to you. All right, so now this is going to be the case. Every single time that you have any kind of situation where there's an increase in demand, unless there are other circumstances, you're going to see an increase in price and an increase in quantity, because that's the way, if you see the curve move, we're tracking, as the curve moves, it moves up the supply curve. So that drags up the price and drags up the quantity. Okay, so every time, increase in demand, curve shifts right, price goes up, quantity goes up. All right, share and close. Now, oh, that was a good one. You did well with that. Now, what I'm going to do is, no, I won't, I'll skip forward. Now, the market model is not going to stay in a state of disequilibrium, as you saw before. If the market is outside of an equilibrium, then it will immediately return. So you need to be able to explain that. All right, so why, therefore, will a market not stay in a situation of disequilibrium? And go. Good work, Connor. Remember, you had those two situations. You had a situation where there was, yeah, good. There was a situation where you had, there were two words. One began with S and the other began with S. All right, you had a surplus and you had a shortage. And either of those situations can't last in a market. A market will actively push against those. You will find the producers and the consumers, right, interacting in order to eliminate the state of disequilibrium that exists, whether it's a surplus or a shortage. Yeah, okay. Right. So the idea is, as said, if there is a situation of disequilibrium, it's one of two things that's happening. There's either a surplus or there is a shortage, right? And if there's a shortage, we find the price being then bid up, right, by the consumers, like in an auction. If there's a surplus, we find that the stocks, the inventories get built up, so producers will decrease the price in order to try and clear the market. In which case, in both of those situations, you end up moving all by itself back to a situation of equilibrium. So a market will not stay in a state of disequilibrium unless it's forced to, and that's something that we're going to come to later. All right, we'll move on. Now, there's some other ideas about shifts in demand that you can have a think about. If there's an increase in income, if hats now become unpopular in the market for hats, if there's an increase in population. Now, remember when we looked at the demand curve weeks ago, we talked about how the demand curve, because it's downward sloping, it's going to have only two directions it can possibly shift. It can shift to the right or it can shift to the left. So when you get questions like this, an increase in consumer income, you know it's a determinant of demand. So then all you have to do is figure out, is demand increasing or is demand decreasing? And you do that, and it should tell you then, right, which way to draw the demand curve, and then that will give you clues as to what's going to happen in the rest of the market. Okay, so it's either a move to the right or a move to the left. So the first one, for example, if there's an increase in consumers' income, what did we say would happen to demand?
Increase in
It would
demand.
increase.
It would increase. Well done. Yeah, so it moves to the right, and that's the same as what you just drew. Okay, so because you've only got those two shifts, you've only got a rightward shift and a leftward shift. Right, that's all you've got for demand. It either shifts to the right or to the left. So there's only ever going to be those two shifts. So no matter what the situation you get with regards to demand, those are the two directions that you're only going to be able to draw. So as long as you've got a drawing of both, an increase in demand, what happens to price, what happens to quantity, a decrease in demand, here we go, hats becoming unpopular, decrease in demand, what happens to price, what happens to quantity. So as long as you've got those two situations for demand in your notes, you're just going to need to apply them to whichever case study you're given, because that's the only way it can move. Right, now, what happens if hats suddenly become, no, we did that. Move on. Next one is supply. Here we go. We're going to think about what happens if supply increases. So here we go. If the market for hats, if we see supply increasing, and have a draw. Same idea, wanting you to think about what happens in the market, price and quantity. But this case now we're talking about supply. Good work. Yeah, need to make sure you're drawing the curves in. And remember, it's that same like we do with demand. You're trying to figure out what happens to the price and the quantity. In this case, when supply increases. Yep. So this one here, that's Angie, that's demand. You've shifted.
Sorry, I'm a bit confused.
Yeah, doing well. All right. No, doing well. Again, I know it's not easy doing it on the computer. But this will be you doing this in your notes. like your work, Evelyn. It's looking very good. And Connor. Work, Charles, keep going. Okay. Yeah, it's looking good. I like it, Tracy. Very good. Darwish. All right. So what we're going to do, I'm going to pick one. Let me see. One that's possibly clearest to see. Interesting. I might pick, let's see, I might pick Connor's this time. So if you have a look at what Connor has done, this is really good work. Yeah, maybe add a label or two would be good, right, for supply and demand, so we know who they are. But the thing again, what you're trying to find out is if supply in this case is increasing, what is actually happening to the price and what is happening to the quantity. So what have you noticed has happened to the equilibrium price or the market price and the equilibrium quantity, also known as the market quantity? What has happened?
The price decreased, but the quantity increases.
Well done. And again, this is something that we can see. We can see this just as we did with demand. In real life, we know that this happens. If there's an increase in supply of a good, we in a marketplace, we often will see a decrease in the price. So we see more produced, but we see a decrease in the price of it. And again, it's the same idea here. There's the new supply curve here. Very good arrows. Well done. And we see that the curve has actually shifted. It's been dragged basically down the demand curve. So that's decreasing the price, but increasing the quantity. So that's really good. Well done. All right, so if I close that. All right. So that's what you should be able to see. And again, in your notes, when you draw these, okay, you're going to be able to draw them yourself. And again, it's that same idea where the supply curve, just like with the demand curve, the supply curve can only move in two directions. It's either going to move to the right or to the left. So no matter what case study you're going to find, it either moves to the right or to the left. So therefore, you're going to know that if it's moving to the right, then the price level should fall. If it's moving to the right, the equilibrium quantity should be increasing. Now, it might be that there are other things that are impacting as well, and we will look at some of those. But that's what you're going to see. So now you've got the supply curve moving in two directions, and you've got the demand curve moving in two directions. So if you were to add those two together, you've got four possible scenarios that might take place. A demand curve increasing or decreasing, a supply curve increasing or decreasing, and then the resulting effects on the market of those. Now, it's entirely possible, just to show you how complicated this, the progression of complexity, it's entirely possible that demand could shift at the same time as supply, in which case you're going to have two curves moving at once. All right, and then you have to then work out what has happened. Where is the new equilibrium from there? What has happened to price? What has happened to quantity? And when we start looking through some of your multiple choice questions, that's one of the favorite things that examiners like doing. Not necessarily showing just one shift, but showing two shifts, demand and supply changing. And then you have to work out what's happened to the price. Might also be that there are two demand shifts or two supply shifts, and what has happened to the market. All right, well done. Now we're going to move on. Now here are some examples. These are, as again, little wee case studies. So the first one, an increase in raw material costs. So remembering that the supply curve is only going to be able to shift to the right or to the left. Okay, so if there is an increase in raw material costs, which way is the supply curve going to shift?
It's gonna move to the left.
It's going to move to the left. Well done. And then you're going to be able to say, oh, that's what the exams asked me. Right, quick sketch diagram. Here's the supply curve shifting to the left. What happens to price? What happens to quantity? And that's what you're going to be able to do. Okay. Whether you need to actually physically draw it in the exam or whether you use it as a sketch to help you explain it is that next step. Okay. So you've got initial definitions about market models, laws of demand, laws of supply. Then you've got what happens, like different case studies that could appear. And then it's an application of that model. So it's another whole skill level that you've just leapt to. So the application could be illustrate, so draw a market model showing this happening, or it could be draw a market model showing this happening and explain why it has happened. Explain why it has happened. All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go out of here now. I'm going to go. Yes, we can resume that later. I'm going to do the stop sharing business. And I'm going to jump back to here with you. Here you are. Hello. All right. Now, in classroom, so you remember I said that I posted like a summary, a survey, right, where you put your name and then you're going to put things that you've learnt in the lesson. It's just so that I can keep track. All right. And so that I'm going to be able to track who has been in the lessons and what they're learning. All right. So that's there for you to do. The next thing that I have also posted, which hopefully has arrived, okay, into the classroom is a doc. And what I'm wanting you to do in it, if I can find it, let me find it, and I will show it to you. What I'm wanting you to do in this particular doc, where are you? Here you are. You're not year 11s, you're year 10s. Better find the right one. All right, so I'm going to go back to here. Sorry, I'm going to go back to sharing so that you can see it. Apparently what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to stand slightly off center of the camera. That's what apparently the rule is. It's easier for you to see then. Right, so it's this one here, I think. Yes, application. So the instructions, here we go. Why have I untitled that one? That's a pain. Add to the table in the document below, research a real-life market that has either had an increase in demand, a decrease in demand, an increase in supply, or a decrease in supply. And I'll put an example in there for you. So to show you the doc here, this is what you're having. Should have a title. There we go. There's the title. Right. So here's my example. So you'll put your name in, then what's happened in the market. So you're going to do some research, all right? A news article about a market, and you'll put what has happened there, and then you'll put the link to that news article in this column here. Does that make sense, what I'm wanting you to do? Are there any questions about that?
No, it makes sense.
No? If you do have questions as you're going through this, you can always email me. But what we're going to do, if I stop sharing, all right, and go back here. What we're going to do is we'll finish the meet now, and then the rest of this time is for you to do that research, fill in the survey, etc., and also have a little bit of a mental, all right, before your next lesson, okay? Because this can get quite intense. Again, supposed to stand slightly to the offside of the camera, all right? So have a go at that. If you have any questions, email me. I will have a go at answering, but that's what I'm wanting you to do, all right? Otherwise, as we'd say in the land of my birth, e kornera, which means goodbye for now.
Bye. Thank you.
See you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
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 Bye.